And today we're going to go through how basically PMs can confidently bring AI into their products. Hopefully it will be fun and I would say practical session. And I think we'll give you a good idea about how the course will basically expand over the 4 weeks that we're running it. Before we start, I'll give you a bit of background about myself. I've been working in product for the last 8-9 years now. I founded 2 companies in the past. First one was during my PhD many years ago, which was actually in computer science. And it was the first time where I basically got the chance to build something on my own. It was part of my kind of research, right? Commercialize my research into something meaningful. And I fell in love with the process of building products. So actually, after I exited the venture and I finished the PhD, I decided to spend some time working more kind of traditional product organization to understand what good looks like. And so since then, I've been working with predominantly B2B SaaS applications from both IC and leadership roles. So I built teams, I expanded teams. I've been working for early stage startups like pre-PMF all the way to Series B, C, D, even the enterprise companies as a consultant. And I've actually experienced a lot of interesting pains that I would actually wanted to distill into this course. And we're working with the collab teams to actually make this happen. I've been working actually with AI since the beginning of my career. Somehow, not intentional, but somehow all the products I worked on, they had some AI elements, not in the Gen AI sense that we have this kind of the last 2 years, more on the traditional ML applications, more predictive analytics, but also more hardcore AI stuff like applied mathematics, and so on and so forth. And I think I'm generally excited and passionate about how AI can bring differentiation into a product. And I've seen this happening over and over again. And in this course, I thought I'll give folks a bit of a flavor of how I've seen this working quite well, things that don't work quite well, and where I see opportunities to find real value by applying this kind of AI thinking into product management. So I'll start by saying that obviously why this is important. Obviously, my personal motivation is very high because I'm truly passionate. I believe that this can bring huge differentiation in products, but generally from a market perspective and where we are, the inflection point in the market, there's never been the best time actually to build AI products. A lot of people are a lot more aware from both customers, users perspective, but also internal stakeholders, even investors. They have a very good kind of opinion and view about this space. And I think that's fantastic to help drive kind of agreement and alignment. So it's a lot easier to get buy-in from people to introduce this kind of initiatives in a product. But I think most folks and most teams are often overwhelmed. And even worse, I've seen sometimes they tend to waste time on things that either never ship or they deliver like very little value. And today, I think what we're going to do is trying to unpack a bit how AI fits into a product strategy. It's not, in my view, just as simple as just let's add, connect to OpenAI, get ChatGPT to the app. And it's more about finding where the real problems are, validating them, and actually using AI in a more kind of strategic, focused, and opinionated way. So today we're going to cover these 4 areas. We're going to look a bit about what are some real applications of AI that I believe can give us some really good idea of how we can implement this into our products. Then I'll try to share a simple framework that I've been using, and I think it helped me a lot kind of assess opportunities and actually execute them effectively. And then I'll share some insights around common mistakes and potentially best practices that we can leverage. And at the end, I'll give you a bit of a preview of the course just to summarize this. So moving into the meaty parts, and I think this is something that always helps me, as I said, frame a bit the opportunity and where we are at this point in time. And obviously we are at a very critical point in time. It's like an inflection point. We know that a lot of organizations have already increased AI investment into their kind of applications, or they'll continue to increase that investment. And I think it was the case where I was reading recently that by next year or the year after, more than 80% of software will have some kind of version of AI application in them, either generative or other. And I think we see like most of us, again, we don't have enough data points today. I would love to get a sense of how many people are actually using AI on their day-to-day roles, but definitely more than 50%. From what I've seen, is like around 60% of PMs are already leveraging some kind of AI application in their day-to-day. But what is the interesting thing is that 39% of companies, at least again in the UK, they basically find it difficult identifying use cases in order to find and accelerate adoption. And this is actually very, very important because, again, highlighting that it's very critical to bridge the gap between what is the technical potential versus the real product value. And again, I think what this tells us is that this is not really a fringe, I would say, capability anymore. PMs need to be ready, need to become necessarily kind of, sorry, I think I'm breaking up. It's not necessarily about becoming AI engineers. It's not about understanding all the foundational models and how they operate, but it's more about understanding where the opportunities lie, ask the right questions, and then have the ability to partner effectively with their technical teams. So what good looks like? Again, I did a bit of retrospective, trying to find products that I've been using and trying to understand and reflect on them, understand a bit, put the curtains back and looking at how they actually did it. Obviously, I worked myself at Product Board. I helped build this application, but I've been using it since I left, like 2 years ago, and try to understand how this actually empowers PMs to prioritize their capabilities based on incoming feedback. So what is the problem? The problem is obviously a lot of PMs struggle to make sense of a lot of the data points that they gather from user feedback, internal teams, CS teams, and it's really hard to do this. And how they actually can make sense of that data in order to prioritize faster, have clarity on their roadmap, and ultimately align their organization and make sure that the customer is satisfied with their product. So to me, this is a perfect example of a very clear need and a very simple application that is using existing technology like NLP to basically make this reality come to life for true value. Sorry, someone wants to join. Let them in. Oops, sorry. Sorry, let me see, I've jumped. Another example I've got here, again, something from my personal experience. Obviously, Netflix, it's about personalized recommendations. People, again, say, give me too many choices, and I'm always really going to struggle. But it's actually finding the right recommendation that is relevant to me as a user and trying to be able to relate to that recommendation so I can actually increase my engagement with the platform. And obviously, this is a very kind of simple scenario that has a true impact for the business. Looking at Airbnb, like how people find what they're looking for. Again, there's this kind of very complex aspect of search. Again, search is not really a new problem. And we know like from Google, how people interact with Google, it's really, really difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. So having this ability to, in a simple way, an intuitive way, find what you're looking for, it's very important for your bottom line in terms of how people convert essentially the queries with the actual kind of search result and ultimately the bookings. Notion, I think it was the first one I remember who jumped into this Gen AI space a few years ago. I remember the first version of Notion AI was kind of crazy because people can actually use Gen AI within their workspace. I think it helped kind of unify this experience into a single product. And I think what the problem was trying to basically help people save time. And basically, I don't really need to spend too much time writing up, and I don't need to spend too much time formatting the content. And again, with a very simple kind of connection with an LLM, you could get an 80% improvement to what you're trying to do. And I think you could say you can get massive time benefits by doing so. And I think there's many obviously examples in this space in terms of tools that start gradually understanding the use cases and starting building on top of their stack. So in terms of like kind of try to summarize where AI works best. I think this is kind of the bottom line and kind of the common denominator across most of the examples that I've seen is that AI is most effective when it tackles things that are either manual, very messy, potentially repetitive, or inconsistent. So it's thinking about something like a customer support or internal triaging or summarizing documentations, things that actually takes time. And these are basically where are my users actually wasting effort? Where do you have already structured data to solve this? But that's where I think the current kind of AI technologies can help us massively. And with that, I would like to share my framework that I've been using over the years to evaluate these opportunities. As I said, it's a very simple thing to remember, and I think a lot of PMs can relate to. So there are 3 steps. First step needs to be problem first. Understand basically and define a clear user pain. It's not about starting a statement by AI can do this. It's about starting an unmet need. Second thing is about feasibility check, and we can dive deep into all 3 of those things later on. But can we solve this problem with the data we have, the technology we have, all the tools are reliable to address? Do we have the technical capability as a team to address this? And the third, the most important is, will this problem, by solving this problem, will this drive our key metric? Would it save time? Would it drive revenue? Again, ultimately, this will avoid falling into this trap of, yeah, let's build a cool demo that doesn't solve anything. I've seen a lot of people fall into this trap. So let's look at these steps a little bit more in action. So when we talk about problem first, like, again, what exactly are we talking about? Do we have a genuine user problem that AI can solve? Do we have enough insights about the user pains that we're solving? As we said, this could be done by our primary research, by our CS, GTM folks, things that we are already aware of. And we should always try to avoid starting with technology and then trying to find a solution to that problem. I think this is where actually I've seen the biggest kind of problem, and it's actually sometimes natural to fall into this trap. Say, okay, we have this technology, let's try to find a use case for us. So I've given you here some examples that you can ask, like, what user problems are you solving? Why does it need an intelligent solution? Sometimes you might not even need something like this. You can solve with a very simple application. And then how does it fit actually in your overall product strategy? Do you even have an AI product strategy that you should considering? So all of these are very important questions that will help you understand how you can bring problem first in this framework. Then the feasibility check. I think this is actually my favorite one because it forces you to say, can we build this? And the most important, should we build this? Because again, because of the democratization of AI applications, people think, yeah, because it's accessible, I can just call the API from OpenAI. I can actually introduce AI into my product. Do we have the necessary data? Obviously, you can do something with the current technology, but would this actually make any difference? Is the technology that we are trying to solve either achievable, or do we have this available? Do we have the knowledge in the team? Are we building it in-house? Are we getting contractors to outsource this? What is the actual framework that we're introducing into this part? And then do we have the right teams? And do we have the money and the resources to actually execute this? This is super important because I feel a lot of things initiated as a product initiative, but then there is very limited alignment within the organization around how we can actually execute this. And the final bit, which I think is also the biggest kind of deal breaker, is what's the payoff? I've been talking a lot the last, I don't know, 6 years around ROI on this type of initiatives. How do we quantify, like, what is the business impact? Is it to, as we said, save time? What are the key metrics? Is it like revenue? Is it about purely marketing? I've seen this before, and it's actually a fair way to think about this space. A lot of companies treat this as a marketing exercise. But as long as you align with the stakeholders internally that the value that you're trying to achieve is X, Y, Z, then I think whatever comes out of the other side, there is going to be a lot more kind of alignment, and you'll be able to get the most out of it. So what I'm just trying to do essentially now is go through the framework in action, just use some examples so we can see what this looks like. So again, these are hypothetical scenarios, but again, it's something that you can consider it in your own situation. Again, let's take, for example, a hiring tool and start thinking about what the problem is. Typically, the recruiters are spending kind of quite a lot of time manually screening hundreds or thousands of CVs. What is actually possible? So most of the times the CVs can be structured. You might have a form that people submit their CVs. Everything has their own field. Technically, you can have a very good data set of your of all your data. And then on the other side, you have the exact point of what is the job application. So you can have a very interesting classification algorithm, or you can also fine tune an LLM to basically extract the key points that you want from both sides of your data set. Once you do this, then what is actually the value? Ultimately, you automate this process, and I think a lot of companies are already doing this. I know, for instance, there is a very famous fast-growing startup called Mercor. They're actually trying to automate this process and change completely the experience about how candidates interact with potential companies in terms of how they submit their CV and how they get scanned and go through this process. Ultimately, it helps them save hours and obviously the time that the company gets the hires is reduced significantly. Another example is obviously, I mentioned earlier, for me, it's a very common use case, even though I know there's a lot of kind of potential drawbacks, because when you interact with end users and customers, there's always a limit of how much you can push the automation. It's a help desk tool. Typically, people talk with certain agents either via chat or via the phone, and then people sometimes they have to log the tickets so they can basically keep track of them. But typically that takes a lot of time. How you summarize a long conversation that happened over the phone is like extremely time consuming, and most of the times there is so much fluff that you never really get to the point of it. But again, companies that do this type of job, they have so many kind of data points that they can gather. Typically, they use some kind of classification like tagging system, but you can actually start grouping the data into a meaningful sense that is actually related to your organization. And this could be done in a very simple way. And from that, you can actually very quickly start getting some themes regarding, okay, weekly by weekly changes on a specific area of my product. For example, onboarding, we get a lot of requests regarding onboarding, something is breaking up. So let's try to optimize this. Where are the biggest opportunities? By triaging this quickly, you can also get insights about where are the opportunities for us to improve. And this is actually better time, better pace, better time to market. What I'm going to try to do next, again, we don't have a big group, but I think it might be actually quite beneficial to try to use this framework. Again, I would encourage you to think about your product. Maybe it is a product that you're using on a regular basis, but I'd like you to think about it. I'll give you 5-10 minutes. Again, now it's just the two of you. And then maybe if you're up for it, we can actually reverse the roles a bit and hear from you how your frame helps you think about this space. Does it make sense? Cool. I'll give you then 5 minutes for now, and then we can come back to this. I'll leave this slide on. Um, you guys need more time?
I'm good. I've got one.
Okay.
Well,
Hey, David.
fine, but
Sorry, we didn't say hello.
well, you can jump on ahead.
Yeah. You guys want to share, or how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I can share. I can start. So yeah, I've been working for a company called Enthuse for the past 6 years, and what Enthuse does is it provides an online fundraising and donations platform for charities. So one of the problems that charities have is that in the UK, donors can claim for gift aid, and there's specific rules that HMRC has in terms of what is eligible and ineligible. So what charities end up doing for big charities, they'll actually pay a team of people who'll review these claims manually. So they'll have like an internal process with criteria, which in some cases can actually be more comprehensive than what HMRC requires, which does baffle me slightly because, really they only need to follow HMRC's rules. But anyway, they have a team and they go through their process and they will review each donation and then decide if it is or it isn't eligible for gift aid based on what the donor said. So there's about 7 or 8 data points that need to be processed, but there is a subjective element around it. But it feels like a good opportunity for an AI solution, because if you can feed it the information about HMRC's requirements, you could even enhance that with the charities' requirements if they do want to be more strict or more risk averse. And then it could review all of those data points for you, for the charity, which would then save hours of admin time. It would improve the quality as well of the claims, you would hope, and also just the general robustness of those claims. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's really helpful. Again, a few questions that come to mind that worth considering is obviously, as you said, like how long does the current process take, like from a set of baseline in terms of like manual process, and then see whether that actually what will be the upside, basically trying to do a small exercise potentially to think about if we automate, I don't know, 10%, or maybe again, ultimately the goal is to do it 100% automation or whatever it is, but again, try to think about in that way. That's definitely going to help you trying to break down the problem. And then I think the other main concern potentially on the feasibility check is understanding like what are the potential risks of actually doing something wrong. Because again, if you're thinking about this is like a HMRC kind of scenario where if I do a claim wrong, then someone has a very kind of negative effect. Then like, again, thinking about what type of technology would you use, and if there is like potential downsides of, we get it wrong, what could go problematic. And then again, I will force you to think more about the actual implementation, because, okay, there is a mechanism in place where say, okay, we have some thresholds. We say, okay, above that threshold, we are confident. Below that threshold, maybe there is a user check, for example. How this could play. But I love the use case, and actually it's quite unique. I haven't heard of something like this, but my view is that in the next 10 years there's going to be a massive number of companies that are vertically integrated on the AI space, and there will be huge companies, because people talk about this horizontal place, but in my view there is a massive number of vertically integrated companies that will be a game changer. Thanks for sharing this.
No problem.
David, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah. So for context, I work for BT as a product manager. The product I manage is a back-end platform that supports a front-end sales journey. So imagine you're a small to medium-sized business. You come into the BT website and you're looking for either broadband or a mobile, at the mobile phone, or like a data package. So the problem I thought I would try and apply is that if you're already an existing customer to BT, you might be at the point where you're renewing your broadband or your mobile, but you're not really sure on what package is best suited, because we've got so many different options that are 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and then different speeds as well. And generally, SMBs are very time constrained. I don't really want to go into that detail. So that's the particular problem. Talking about the feasibility of it with applying AI to it would be, well, in BT we have, monthly usage data for the existing customers for whether it's mobile or broadband. I think we might already have sort of traffic data to see how many sort of people would be either, getting access to the broadband. And I suppose the value that I put down is the time saving for the user if we were to be able to kind of just suggest a package for them, and we could kind of at the time of renewal we can just kind of send an email to them and say, hey, it's time to renew. We've curated this package for you. Click on this button, and we'll redirect you to the checkout, and you see what why.
Love it. Yeah, thanks for sharing, David. That's really very cool. And I can relate to this. I mean, I'm actually subscribed to Octopus Energy, and I get some, I don't know if it's AI powered or if it's like an actual human, but there is some kind of personalization element that depending on your usage, I get some emails that say, oh yeah, we've seen you your price, your monthly fee, and would need to be reduced because you already are in credit and blah blah blah. So they actually proactively go and reduce your monthly payment, and it's actually something that I find it very very handy because it doesn't force me to do anything, and there is an action if something I need to do or not, but it actually makes the users bring into this flow. And actually I would not challenge, but I will actually make you think that potentially the problem in this type of platforms may be actually engagement with the users, because typically you sign up to a product and then you forget about it. It's just 12 months, you don't need to do anything, or whatever is the contract they have for. Is this something that you are actually actively trying to optimize for, or is this purely you want to make sure that they are, is the retention basically? But maybe these two metrics could be correlated. How many people are engaged with your platform and how many people are actually ended up staying if you get a good deal with them. But I think it's a great example of a use case that could actually make a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Love it. So thank you both for sharing. Appreciate that. And I think again, what we're gonna try to do as part of this course going forward is actually trying to apply this kind of thinking end to end. Obviously, this is quite high level right now, but the idea over the 4 weeks, the goal would be around how we can actually go find the problems, validate them, go try to test them, maybe prototype them. There are so many tools out there you can actually use without really need to code anything. And ultimately, by the end of the week 4, you can actually have potentially a very solid proposal that you can actually go for and say, okay, this is how it looks, this is the data point, this is the value that I can get, and I can actually go and build it. That's exactly kind of where we're going with this course. Will be very, very practical, and it will have this element of iterating, trying, presenting, and continually getting feedback and iterating. In terms of like next steps, like, let me see. Sorry. I'd like to share some common pitfalls. I think we touched upon a bit earlier in terms of where I see potentially problems with companies, but I think again, a lot of you might relate to this, but to me, AI isn't really a silver bullet. I think there is a lot of things that we fall into the trap as PMs, especially these days where there is a bit of noise. We were discussing this with Will earlier, like there is so much noise in this space, which is sometimes hard to find like where exactly I should be focusing on. But I think often I see that people overestimate what AI can actually do. And if you haven't built an AI system before, I think this is like very, very natural. You hear stakeholders saying, oh yeah, this company did X, Y, Z in 2 months. Why can't we do something like this? And then you're forced into this rabbit hole of trying to prove that they are right. And it's just like, yeah, we can build it, but would this actually make any difference? Or sometimes the output could be completely wrong or completely unusable. I mean, having built both our own models in the past, which is extremely, extremely time consuming, and these days a lot more expensive than using an out-of-the-box model. I can tell you for sure that the experience of building your own model, it is a lot more humbling because you can actually understand the whole process of actually where can I get the data, how I can label the data, what type of model we can optimize versus, oh yeah, let's plug into the API that could work for a cool demo, but it could be completely crap. So I think this is essentially a big problem that I see happening over and over again. Like you can have a demo, but in production things get stuck. And actually, from the data that we've seen in the market, this is actually the case. The second thing is about trust and UX. I think for me, this is a big one. I would say it is part of my values as a PM, like having very much of a user-centered design approach. And people underestimate how this result would affect my user experience. Would I lose trust? Again, I started by saying a lot of more people are kind of familiar with AI technologies and they understand the limitations. But still, depending on your product and your use case, if you work in a regulated environment or if you work with kind of sensitive data or information, presenting something I would say dodgy or potentially sketchy to an end user could affect trust massively. And then this is really difficult to basically bounce back after this. And trap number 3, again, is starting with tech. I feel this is, to me, probably a new kind of thing that happens with GPT, mainly because people can actually use it very easily. But the problem is it doesn't really fit every use case. It can work for certain things, but ultimately the problem is a lot bigger. And sometimes that's where you need to have the team to find what is the right technology that we can use. Maybe it's a combination of things. Maybe it's not even AI in the first place. But ultimately, that's where I think it's a big problem. And then this is kind of where I distill the learning here, where I see the main kind of layer that as PMs we need to use AI for. It's more about your team buddy, your associate PM kind of thing, or another teammate that you have within Rage. Like it's not really a black box, or it shouldn't be treated as a black box. Again, the fundamentals are still there, so we need to lead with product thinking, and it's not just about the models. I think most of our use cases are kind of still product first kind of problems, unless you work for a deep tech or a research organization where you actually need to build these kind of foundational models. But in most of the cases, the principles are still around product thinking. So what I've seen on the flip side, again, summarization of what makes things successful in terms of the teams that use the AI. And right now I've worked like, I don't know, 5, 6 different teams. They're all different maturity. But I think, again, the first one is not surprising, but partner with engineers early. I think we need to be empowered to ask the right questions and challenge engineers about what exactly would make more sense from a technical point of view to implement. Yes, we need to ask the right question about the type of data, how clean is our data. Having built models myself, I know that 90% of the job is actually having clean data and having the right type of data. And people still underestimate how important this is, even these days. But again, this is actually, for me, the biggest one. The second thing is something that it can become a lot easier, and it is a lot easier these days, about how you can prototype faster and you can validate even faster. The third point of the framework is about the value. And these days, with the right tools that we have, you can definitely get to this point a lot quicker, because you can literally, from identifying the problem to finding a high level potential solution to it, you can really quickly iterate and get feedback from the users and stakeholders. You don't really need to invest, I don't know, 3 quarters building a POC of something. You can understand whether this actually solves the problem and just keep going. Once you validate the value, you can say, okay, people are willing to pay. It's something that I actually struggled with when we did the work at Product Board AI, right? It was one of the initial things that we did, trying to go to specific customer segment we want to enable and trying to have specific use cases that we wanted to unlock, and basically ask this question: would you be willing to pay extra on top of your monthly contract for this? And we drove a lot of decisions based on that. So it was a very cheap experiment that you can run and just get early feedback. And the last bit is about, lead with discovery. I think this is, again, should be the foundational part of any good PM, is understanding, obviously, where the key user problems are. And again, I believe that as PMs, we need to be extremely opinionated about this. We are not doing service design, right? It's about how we drive the organization and the basically overall company forward, to basically have a true empathy about what are the core personas we are trying to address, understanding what is their problems, where are they finding the biggest bottlenecks on their daily jobs, and how we can actually try to address those problems. It's not going to be a binary thing, 0 to 1. There could be obviously different nuances of these problems, but ultimately, by having this good understanding, you can actually get probably more than 50% of the job done, because you have a very clear idea of where the opportunities lie. So the bottom line for this, again, what it is that you could do successfully, is about, if you can validate the problem and have this kind of confidence with engineering teams and show value early, it's actually not worth doing AI into your product. And I truly believe that. I think these are the 3 things that I always ask every time we start a new initiative. And if some of these parts are not really clear, it's probably not yet worth doing. And what is the interesting thing is here is that you typically do this on a single point, right? So you have a specific idea, you do this exercise, and then you continue doing for as many ideas as you have. Ultimately, you do this across your product stack, and then you have a stack rank, right? Where are the biggest opportunities? Where are the things that we can address early? And basically start building your roadmap. That's how actually you can actually start building your AI roadmap in a very simple way. You can start thinking this in a more kind of smaller chunks around specific problems, and then doing this exercise incrementally, finding and mapping them against each other, and finding obviously where the biggest value creators are. But ultimately, that's how you can make it happen. We are getting towards the end. I want to leave some time for questions as well, in case you have. I just want to give you a bit of a summary of the course. We touched about this earlier. Again, today it is a taster, just to get a sense of the areas we're going to cover. But my view here, and any type of course, actually, it needs to be practical, it needs to be hands-on. And that's the only way you can get from this kind of very fuzzy, vague kind of a space where you can actually get confident and go and apply this into your day-to-day job. But ultimately, the structure of the course is in a way kind of, as I said, start from nothing and go to something at the end of it. I'm hoping that people that join the course will have, by the end of it, a validated idea that have proven that this can potentially work and add value to their organization. Maybe it's an MVP, maybe it's a design prototype, maybe it's an actual prototype that they built using, I don't know, vibe coding, whatever they can. The tools are there, but ultimately, I want people to be in this position where by the end of week 4, in simple 4 weeks, you can actually get something that you can potentially apply in your organization and hopefully drive it further. But I think this is obviously starting with doing some AI discovery, understanding some fundamentals about the systems. It's, again, I don't want this to be like a lecture about, oh yeah, this is how LLMs work. There are so many resources out there about this. We'll touch some fundamentals, but then we'll talk a little bit more about how AI validated ideas can take place. Then doing a bit of scoping, discussions with engineering, how you can approach certain conversations to find what's the best approach to break things down. And ultimately, by week 4, we can have something that can be launched. Maybe you already launched something, you gathered some feedback from early users that are willing to do something with your idea, and then what are the learnings. But ultimately, the goal is to have this practical experience, and this can be through only, my opinion, through hands-on exercises. But ultimately, this will help build confidence in actually executing this type of applications in your day-to-day. And with that, I would like to thank you both for joining. And yeah,